So, hi, this is the Firefly Adda, a virtual conversation starter where we talk to different thought leaders from different walks of life and, discuss on some relevant topics and very interesting insights that we actually sort of, bring out. So, today's episode is extremely special because we'll be talking about our doctors. And I've actually named this topic as Doctors Are Heroes. Considering the existing challenging situations that each of us are actually sort of facing, I think it becomes all the more relevant to actually, bring in some thoughts around, what is actually going on. And, there would be a lot of anxiety and fear and restlessness amongst each of us. So I believe through our discussion points today, most of the questions would be sort of answered, and there would be a sense of calm that we want to bring in through our conversation with our very special guest. I would actually like to call him our hero, our frontline warrior, Dr. Arjun Sharma, resident internal medicine. Hi, Dr. Arjun Sharma, and welcome to the Firefly Adda.
Hi, Kush. Thank you so much for having me over. I'm so
uh,
glad to be a part of the Firefly Vada.
Thank
And
you
yeah,
so much.
Doctor Heroes is an interesting topic. Thank you so much.
No, absolutely. I mean, considering the scenarios and the challenging situation that we are in, I think you guys are our frontline heroes, and we really have to stand up and have to salute you for what you exactly are doing these days. For each one of us, fighting for us. Um, so you actually have a special place amongst each of our hearts, and thank you so much once again. Is what all that we could actually say at this given moment. So our viewers here would be interested in knowing a lot of different things, a lot of unknowns, which are actually sort of out there, and a very ambiguous future is what is actually staring at most of us. So I think this conversation more or less should be revolving around what this scenario really is, what these challenges really pose at this given moment, and how are
Yeah.
we actually sort of coping and fighting this given situation. So with that in mind, I think the most important or the relevant question that I would like to bring up real quick here is now India, overall is
Mhm.
actually such a huge voluminous country in terms of population, in terms of diversity, in terms of the divide between the rich and the poor. So my question to you is, how is India really coping up with this adverse situation? Now it's been over a month since all of us have been locked down. So do you think the efforts from the government and our frontline warriors like you have sort of led to flatten the curve in terms of the statistics or the data points of the COVID virus patients?
Kush, what I'd like to say about this is it's first of all an amazing topic what we have picked up.
Yeah.
And I agree what you're trying to the concept being that it's been a month under lockdown and what exactly is happening at the back end. Like a lot of people are involved. It is, I wouldn't just say that the doctors are the frontline heroes. There's the nursing staff, there's the entire healthcare team,
Yeah.
the policemen, everybody who's helping us stay home, and everyone who's sitting home and trying to keep their bit is a hero for me. And but yeah, so how India is doing right now is I would call it is on a flattened curve to a certain extent, but there are certain states which are of concern, like you can take Delhi, Maharashtra, Gujarat. Now there are certain states which have done well. Now you can look at Goa for that matter. Goa, I agree, is a small state. It's a very small. It's more of a UT, but they have zero cases. And then there's this the state of Kerala. Kerala was where we came with the first case. Like those couple of students who returned from Wuhan apparently, and they were the ones who tested positive initially. So I was believing that Kerala might be more affected, but for some reason I've seen a very good recovery rate in Kerala. So yeah, I think we are hoping to be on a good path.
So the cases are not really essentially, exponentially increasing. It's more linear, is what our understanding is. So, and we haven't gotten into the community stage of this virus, being spread. Is that right? Is that a fair assumption to
What
make?
Yeah, I will tell you something about it. Is right now what we are doing, I would believe, is firefighting.
Hmm.
We are not putting off the fire because what are we doing right now? Everybody is inside. It's a lockdown. How long can a country like India sustain this, or any country for that matter? What we're seeing now is not what we're worried about. Once we start resuming normal life, what will happen then is should be our main concern, right? Like the factors like why India is still doing well, the early initiation of the lockdown, that we took some early measures. There is a good amount of testing for how much population we have right now, but I would believe it is still not sufficient because there are a lot of areas which need more attention, like smaller states and smaller districts possibly they would need more testing. And I somewhere believe that there might be some involvement of our tropical weather, which might be just playing a saving grace somewhere.
So you are saying that the summer heat in a way is actually sort of neutralizing the effect of this virus in a way, and we've just touchwood just entered the summer season. So I think we have a good maybe a month and a half, a couple of months of the summer season to actually take its full peak. So do you believe that's actually going to be a blessing in disguise in a way that is actually going to help curb the number of cases in India?
In all honesty, we haven't studied the whole virus enough, but yes, I am believing that this will do some good at least. Like, but we have to resume life, so there is a very dicey situation. We are giving a good favor,
Yeah.
but the fact that life has to resume, how do we live with that? I would call it the new normal actually.
So you mentioned the new normal, and you mentioned that the lockdown, in a way, is sort of curbing the number of data points in terms of the cases which we are actually seeing on a day-to-day basis. So you believe post-lockdown is going to be the most critical aspect that each one of us has to closely monitor. So what kind of measures do people really need to take post-lockdown? So do they come out immediately from home, because there are certain a critical mass of people who definitely would want to come out and resume work, because that's important to them, because they are their only sole breadwinners in the family. So what would you actually sort of recommend to people in a way? Do you have some sort of best practices framework that people need to follow post lockdown?
I most certainly do have a few advices. Like, see the whole word that one new hashtag, the social distancing,
Yeah.
where everybody is like social distancing. Like,
Yeah.
I would say we need to practice that once life resumes.
Hmm.
That's the part of the new normal.
Yeah.
First of all, trying to carry sanitizers, maybe hand sanitizers, and basically like using the mask. A mask, I think, for the next 6 months at least, carrying masks and wearing them outside is definitely going to be of some benefit. And I'll give you something of a funny example. So now you want to go out with a movie with your wife, you're getting three seats, not two. The one is empty in between.
So I think that is what the aviation, companies are also sort of deciding. So
Exactly,
the
exactly,
180 seater
exactly,
becomes a 120 seater now. Yeah.
exactly. Because you have to have that space. So even movie theaters, I think, will be alternate seats now.
Okay, so I think, yeah, so that's I think these are some good tips, and what we really want to also understand is that you being a frontline doctor and a part of the infectious diseases department. So how has your experience been so far? Looking at the whole scenario, has it been a little overwhelming? I know you actually see a lot of grave situations, but this in itself is a lot graver, is what we actually feel. So how are you sort of coping up with this whole scenario as a doctor?
That's actually a very beautiful question
Yeah.
because normally people don't ask us this. How are we dealing with it?
Yeah.
It is a very scary situation, to be honest, because there's a funny word saying the invisible enemy.
Hmm.
See, there's something called a super spreader. The super spreader concept is a person who doesn't have any symptoms himself, or basically, I'll give it the most simple way saying an asymptomatic carrier. They don't have any symptoms, they don't have any basic cough, there is no fever, there's no sore throat. And these kind of patients are capable of giving the virus to other people. Basic contagious. So we come in contact with people every day. We're meeting new patients every day. So we don't know when we are contacting the virus ourselves. So it is a very stressful environment because after very long, I think we don't know what to do. There is no specific vaccine by far. We don't have a basic proper guideline of management. So it's a very tricky situation and a very disheartening situation because you don't know what you want to do. But
Okay.
managing the stress is something I think it just comes with the profession. Possibly we've just gotten accustomed to it, and I think we're doing okay. We're doing fine for now.
I mean, that's great stuff. I mean, hats off to you guys for standing up, during these adverse times. You truly deserve, all the accolades and appreciation for what you're doing, and a sincere gratitude and appreciation, for what you guys are actually, standing up and doing there. Now, if I actually sort of flip the question the other way around, now, if, you actually obviously come face to face with a lot of patients who are COVID-19 positive, so how are such patients really coping up? So you actually have to deal with them not just from a physiological aspect, but also from their mental aspect. So how you sort of taking care of those things in a way?
I'd tell you something interesting, Kushagra. I work, the firm I'm associated to is a private hospital, the private sector.
Hmm.
So we are allowed to screen the patients. Like we have a system called the fever clinic. So there we have all the patients with any respiratory symptoms, fever symptoms, and all these kind of patients. We first send them there, screen them, and that is more like the COVID area for any private sector hospital. So we have an isolated ICU, a separate surgery ICU for them, and a separate OT and everything in place. But considering the present government norms, we're not allowed to admit any positive case. So we're obviously like we're supposed to send these patients to the government sector. So I wouldn't say that there's a lot of tension in the hospital, but definitely even having a suspected COVID case, like we have about 10-15 suspected cases every day. And even taking care of them is the same kind of measures what you take care of a COVID patient. So it's a very tense environment overall because some people are worried if their families are infected.
Hmm.
Some people are worried who all they've met. So we need to find a channel about where all the person has traveled, what kind of interactions he's had. Has he gone into any social events, any gatherings coincidentally? Because then we need to isolate and quarantine that entire crowd which he's come in contact with. Because if they are positive, we're again looking at a big number which is coming our way. So the mental tension, I wouldn't say is something which is too troublesome because it is being managed at a very base level and a lot of cases reverting. To be honest, there's a good amount of reversal compared to what we are expected to see.
Okay, I mean, this brings me to another question on the lockdown aspect. You did actually speak about the best practices to follow post lockdown. So I did actually mention that there is a critical mass who actually has to, step out, out of their houses. So what would you actually sort of urge to people who don't necessarily need to step out? So do you just tell them to stay put at home for another maybe couple of months or so and, take care of themselves by staying at home?
If it is possible and if things are not getting better, I think that is the best method for now. And like, see, for any middle class or upper middle class family, anything above that, we have facilities to order things home. We can get it delivered. So, like, if you want to get your groceries, I would suggest just pick up your app, get a list of your things, make a list, or order on all of them online. You just meet one person, the one who's coming to deliver. So it's a lesser chance of coming in contact with the virus. Rather than going out yourself, shopping is anyways converted to being online nowadays. It's very few of us who go out and actually go check clothes out or check our shoes out and pick it up. So I think it has to be a little digitalization has to increase to reduce contact. Basically to reduce contact. What I'm trying to convey here is the distancing because we have kids at home, we all have elderly at home. The mid-age like the young population might survive it, but we might just come as asymptomatic carrier, but we might just infect the extremes of our population.
I think extremely relevant points, very, very important. So that brings me to this thought about, what about vaccines? So as of yet, there's nothing very concrete. So we have about 50 different, uh, pharma companies actually struggling to sort of figure out the ways and means of, how to counter this pandemic. And there were theories about the BCG vaccine or a leprosy vaccine, and they were also being tested. And then, there was HCQ, which was like the front runner. So how far in the future do you actually foresee before we actually see some concrete results with the vaccine, coming in to fight this pandemic?
Okay, let me just break it down for you. As to the best of my knowledge, I think there are about 70 studies which are happening right now all over the world. And as you mentioned about the BCG, the leprosy, and HCQ as one of the most important ones, they all are with very minimal evidence, to be honest. Like there's not been enough amount of tests, enough amount of trials. Like the number of trials would be needed for the evidence to be substantial. So everything is very low on evidence, and I wouldn't bank upon anything right now. And giving a timeline right now would be very questionable on how quickly can we get a vaccine or a management.
Okay, so this actually brings me to a few other sort of interesting, things which are sort of, floating around in the internet. One of them actually being, I actually read about a theory of, a comparison of countries and regions which are actually affected with malaria versus countries and continents which were not. So the ones which are not are actually seeing more number of COVID-19 cases versus the ones which are actually infected by malaria. So is this theory even relevant and true, or does it actually have any meaning for us to even ponder about? So, Dr. Arjun, I think there are some theories floating around about countries and continents which were affected with malaria versus the countries which were not. So the ones which are not are actually sort of seeing more of these COVID-19 cases. So is there any relevance to those theories in any way?
It's again all very theoretical, very hypothetical. I would always say that I'm a person who believes in evidence
Mhm.
and it's science. Without evidence, I will not give a word for anything which I'm not sure about. But yeah, there are certain studies which are saying what you're saying, but I wouldn't take it too much.
Okay, so maybe a few thoughts around. Just give me a minute. So, Dr. Arjun, we keep hearing about this plasma therapy and the antibody, treatment. So, what is this all about? Can you shed some light around that?
Okay, there's something called an antigen antibody reaction.
Mhm.
So the antibody is always a protective factor.
Yeah.
So the antigen antibody is a reaction which happens, and once the antigen is killed, that is the basic common sense would be the bad and the good. So the remaining antibodies have a good feature, the good function. So that is being used against the infected patient, like from patients who have already been infected, been cured, and then develop the antibody. I wanted to break it down to be that simple. So now that is being infused after concentration with patients who are actually sick, the new positive one. So there is some evidence where it's helped in reversal in the northern parts of India.
So, is that where? Sorry, go ahead. You were saying
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Okay, it's okay.
So, is that where the idea of herd immunity stems in? So, yeah.
I would certainly say the herd immunity is something very important. Like that will be what will save the population. What I believe is the population of at least 50 to 60% of herd immunity is what is going to save India. What is herd immunity? I think we should give the basic thing is where a bigger population is already immune or has an infection which they've contacted earlier, which makes them immune to the infection again. It's basically that much. So that herd immunity will definitely play a good role.
Okay, so I think that is the way forward, is what I would actually assume. Yeah, is that right?
Is that exactly that's what I'm trying to say? The lockdown is only going to be firefighting. So unless we come out, we possibly have to get infected and then develop those antibodies to be a little stronger against it. And
Okay.
that's again a hypothetical situation. So let's see how it turns out.
So again, another hypothetical, sort of question. Just today, I was actually reading the news, and the National University of Singapore actually, came out with an analysis about the prediction that when COVID-19 would actually end in different countries, and they actually broke that down for India to have 97% of cases being solved, or no presence of COVID-19 by the end of May. So how relevant or how far is this really true?
Actually, this study was done by I think the SUTD. That's what it's
Yeah,
called.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think what they are saying is it's an artificial intelligence which is calculating this for us. May 21st to May 21st is what they're saying. 91%, 97%, I think
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
But that is if the lockdown continues till May 16th.
yeah.
But also they're saying 100% reversal by December 8th of this year. But again, it's just artificial intelligence. I don't know till where we can be reliable on it. Because if the people aren't going to sit at home, they're going to come out and get infected. I don't think AI will help us much.
No, absolutely. So these are just theories. So I think at least some, ray of hope or positivity that we need to, bring out through our conversation. So yeah.
I think it is a good positive fact, at least. People might just be a little relieved at the fact that
Mhm.
there is some sign as the ray of hope.
Great. So $1 billion question. So when do you foresee this ending?
I don't think I can comment on that, and that will just break my hopes possibly by not being sure.
Okay, so one last parting shot, Dr. Arjun. I think these are tough times, more so for you guys, but for us as well. So, any pearls of wisdom in terms of motivating our viewers, and giving them some best practices on how to sort of stay calm during these adverse conditions?
I think the people have done beautifully till now, and they just have to muster some more patience and courage to bear with it for a little longer. And yeah, the new normal, the social distancing, making your hand wash, possibly soap and water, even if not possible, just to carry sanitizers, carry the mask. I think that is the most important of them all, the mask and your hand wash. Social distancing is like still a 50-50 because I don't know how it will be applicable when life resumes. The kind of population we run,
Yeah.
that is going to be very difficult to maintain, but at least the other two would be something I would urge everybody to practice, not just for COVID in general, actually.
Okay, great. So I think these are some great thoughts, Dr. Arjun. Thank you so much for being a part of the Firefly Adda.
My pleasure, Krish. I'm so glad to have been the
No, like I said, a sincere gratitude and appreciation for what you actually are doing, for standing up for us and, fighting this out. Thank you so much once again. And we, hope and pray that we actually overcome this together, and, see a better world together. So, yes. So thank you so much. Stay safe. And once again, thank you.
stay home, stay safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.